As promised, the grand finale to the Mission Impossible franchise is the next movie on my list. I saw it opening night, hyped as hell. I even put off my last minute packing for a wedding because of it. That's how amped I was. So, shoveling popcorn into my mouth at industrial volumes, my eyes were glued to the screen to see just how Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie and the rest of the Mission Impossible cast I've grown so fond of would send off the franchise with a bang. And, in short, I loved it. It was in every way a heartfelt tribute to the 7 movies that had come before it in action, emotion, and story. There were callbacks to prior moments, connections to previous story threads, and recurrences of characters from films past. Hell, even particular action sequences seemed to pay direct homage to some iconic stunt work and set pieces that fans of the franchise know and love. And the first act or so seemed to be a direct tribute to the original film itself, with lots of Dutch angles and De Palma stylizations to sort of bring the franchise full circle in terms of each movie's individual identity and style. But there was plenty new brought to the table as well. Minor roles were filled out and given life by a supremely talented supporting cast, from Nick Offerman to Tramell Tillman. Each actor gave a sort of earnestness to their small part that made the world and story of the film feel that little bit more believable. Of course, Tramell was probably my personal standout, and I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of time he got, but I do wish he had some larger role to play. Beyond the cast, the big set pieces really hit the mark for me. From the moment Ethan jumped into the ocean until the submarine sequence was finished, I was enthralled. The film is at its strongest in this portion, and for every moment of this long stretch, I was somewhere amongst the feelings of mesmerized, fixated, and horrified. The fight on the sub as well as the shootout in the cabin are just quintessential Mission Impossible action moments. And I'd also claim that the time in and around the Sevastopol is damn near perfection. The score of the sequence borders on some sort of horror and dread, while Ethan explores this underwater graveyard that doubles as his personal death trap, with everything around him becoming more and more collapsed and complicated along his way. The dynamics of the sequence are simply awe-inspiring, and I spent the majority of the time with my mouth agape at the sheer impressiveness of it all. I claim this film earns its price tag in this sequence alone, especially as it continues to ramp up the stakes in increasingly horrible ways as Ethan has to navigate deeper and deeper into the Sevastopol. The climax in the Congo with the caverns and the plane sequence is excellent as well. It was gripping and intense, and at many moments simply insane to witness just how far these films will go for dynamic action sequences with truly innovative stunt work. If nothing else is to come out of this movie, I will walk away with deity-esque worship for Tom Cruise and the set of tungsten testicles he has to be willing and able to do all of this insane shit in the movie. The main team is a joy as well. I adore Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames, and their character moments got a lot of genuine emotion from me. I can't exactly say how much of this is the product of the film itself, though. Between Rhames' actual health issues and the fact that I knew this to be a goodbye of sorts for the franchise, I'm sure some of the wells of sadness and emotional reactions I had were born from that rather than the natural aspects of the film. I also really love the newer additions to the group. Palm Clementeff was great, and I wish she got more time, and Haley Atwell is especially fun. She's got a great charm and excellent banter with Cruise throughout the film, and I would genuinely love to see some sort of comedy between the two of them, since there are really funny moments with those two throughout this movie. Though I will say the romantic angle doesn't really work out for me and feels rather odd, all things considered. Mostly, I guess she's stuck in the shadow of Rebecca Ferguson to some degree, in my opinion. And this, unfortunately, brings me to my issues with Final Reckoning. It is excellent, I do love it, but in many ways, much like Haley Atwell's romantic dynamic with Tom Cruise, it is a lesser of what came before it. Still excellent, mind you, but lesser. To me, the run from Ghost Protocol to Fallout is immaculate, with Fallout being the infallible and perfect peak of the franchise. Dead Reckoning, while not as outright incredible as Fallout, was a worthy successor to it. Final Reckoning, though, feels more like a solid successor to Dead Reckoning. We went from a 95% to a 90% of that 95%, more or less. I think my biggest issue is our antagonistic forces. The AI entity I could get behind and even believe, but when it is coupled with Gabriel, I kind of struggle with it. For my taste, Gabriel is just not as formidable or enticing to the audience as an antagonist as, say, Walker or Solomon Lane in Fallout. Walker and Lane have presence and serious threat to them that I feel is just somehow missing with Gabriel. The movie describes him as some guy in an invisible and unidentifiable way, but for whatever reason, to me, all that I see is just some guy. He doesn't quite hit on any level in the way previous antagonists in the series did for me. And outside of Gabriel, this feeling of just slightly less permeates the film in other ways. The plane sequence, for instance, which I praised earlier, is certainly excellent, but in my mind, all I could imagine was the similar helicopter sequence from Fallout's climax. And for my money, that sequence is more intense and awe-inspiring. It feels more anxiety-inducing and palpable. The confrontations feel more visceral. Even the energy of each moment in Fallout seems more elevated thanks to Lorne Balfe's excellent score in that film. And off of that, Final Reckoning's score isn't quite as amazing as other films either. I could conjure to my ear some motifs and moments of music from the previous films which are iconic to me because of how they impact certain sequences. Beyond the dreadful sounds of the Sevastopol, which I mentioned feel more horrific than action-packed, I can't really do that in Final Reckoning. Compare the track Russia with Shove from Ghost Protocol to probably anything in Final Reckoning, and it's no contest. And that's a very early track from a more mild sequence in Ghost Protocol, which is my third favorite film in the franchise. All that said, these are all issues I can build a bridge and get over. My biggest issue with Final Reckoning is one I felt in brief moments during Dead Reckoning 2. But with Final Reckoning, it's much more pronounced, and that's pace. To my taste, there's just far too much empty space in this film. Mission Impossible is at its best when it's in a constant motion, when it's running at a high-octane pace from one moment to moment, keeping you engaged with either dynamic espionage or adrenaline-pumping action. This just feels near entirely absent for the first hour or so of Final Reckoning. The entirety of the film's big action moments are as follows: a brief infiltration and interrogation fight scene in London, the Osprey jump, the submarine and cabin fights, the Sevastopol sequence, and the climax between the server caves and the biplanes. Across nearly 3 hours, that's a ton of downtime, which feels like it gets wasted in empty air more often than not. Looking at Fallout or even Dead Reckoning, you get laundry lists of intense stunts and intriguing sequences of subterfuge that make Final Reckoning seem like a slog by comparison. Fallout has the opening shootout for the nuke cores, the nuke broadcast switcheroo, the Halo jump, the club bathroom fight, the club fight, the Paris chase, the interrogation, fake out, and confrontation, the London chase where Tom breaks his ankle and the stunt, and then the entire climax, which is simply too eventful to describe but involves multiple nukes, and a helicopter chase and a fight atop a cliff face and Varys and so on and so forth. You get my point. It's a night and day comparison there, and the same is the case for any mission movie from 4 to 7. Unfortunately, Dead Reckoning is a victim of the prior film's outstanding successes in a cruel sort of way. The impossible mission turned out to be meeting such gargantuan expectations that they seem to have been able to deliver on in the past. But in the end, this is all a bit nitpicky. I still love the movie, but my love for it is more akin to a family member than a soulmate. The love is more so something I choose rather than something that just naturally burns within me. Still, when my critiques boil down to not being as perfect as the other movies, and a third of the pacing is bad, you know you've done good work. Anyway, I suppose I'll turn this wrap-up into a thank you to these movies for being such a formative part of why I go to the movies and love watching them in the first place. Much like a lamer version of an adrenaline junkie, I'm forever chasing those blissful moments of amazement where I'm just struck by what's been put to screen before me in a way that I haven't been before. Mission Impossible, in its many entries, has given me that time and time again, and I love the franchise for it. While I'm saddened to see it go, I'm happy it's doing so on its own terms. Better to go out with an impressive, if imperfect finale than to let the golden apple rot. I will miss you, and I will rewatch you endlessly, imperfections and all. In the end, I give Final Reckoning a 3.5 out of 5 stars, with a little smooch for good measure. Go see it, is my verdict. The submarine does more than enough to make the entire experience worthwhile, and then some. And I'm not sure what's next for me, but the summer is looking very strong, so I'm excited to talk about something new and something great. Until next time.